You know, some people really shouldn't joke about brain tumors at family dinners. That was the first thing that ran through my mind as I watched him, Caleb, sit there at the table, looking smaller than usual, almost fragile. I mean, I knew he was sick, diagnosed just 6 weeks ago with a pituitary tumor, malignant, fast-growing, the kind that presses against your optic nerve, but nothing really prepares you for seeing someone you love in that kind of quiet panic. We were at my parents' house in suburban Chicago. It was supposed to be a casual farewell dinner before Caleb flew across the country for surgery, something we'd been planning carefully. My family, the Johnsons, are the kind that measure everything in appearances. My mom wore heels to the dinner, even though we were technically in our backyard. My dad was busy pretending to care about small talk, tossing in questions like, "So, how's work?" without really listening. And my older sister Beth, the one who thinks she's funny, she was already swirling her Chardonnay with that self-satisfied smirk that made me want to smack her. Caleb had been quiet, tense, probably replaying his MRI results in his head 1,000 times. I could tell because he kept adjusting his napkin and staring at the salad like it was a foreign object. My parents, oblivious to his anxiety, were talking about their upcoming trip to Rome. I tried to steer the conversation to something lighter, something Caleb could joke about, but it was like talking to a wall. Then it happened. My mom, trying to be charming, said, "Well, here's to you, Caleb. Let's hope your doctor has steadier hands than my Botox guy." Everyone laughed lightly. Caleb gave a polite chuckle, but I could see it didn't land the way she thought it would. And then Beth leaned across the table, that same smirk plastered across her face, and said, "And let's hope they get it all. Otherwise, Caleb 2.0 might come back dumber again." She laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. I froze. My cheeks warmed, not with embarrassment, but with rage. My own sister was roasting him, mocking his very real, terrifying condition. And the worst part? I didn't say a word. I didn't stop her. Part of me was paralyzed, unsure if speaking up would make it worse, but mostly, I was ashamed. Then I did something I'll never forget. I raised my glass, tapped it lightly with my knife, and said, "Guys, you know the best part? If something goes wrong, I have a whole decade to find someone new who doesn't make jokes about their fiancé's life-threatening illness at dinner." I said it calmly, but inside I was boiling. The laughter froze. My mom gave me that fake scolding look, Qley, but it was weak, hollow, the kind you do when you're embarrassed but don't actually intend to discipline anyone. Caleb's face went pale, his fork clattering against his plate. And that's when I realized I'd crossed a line. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me," I said, my voice tight but controlled. "I'm leaving." And I did. I didn't wait for anyone to protest. I didn't want to. My heels clicked against the hardwood, each step a mixture of fury and heartbreak. I got in my car, leaving the smell of Chardonnay and faux concern behind, and drove straight into the night. I didn't answer his texts that night, nor the next morning. They ranged from "Please, can we talk?" to "You're being dramatic." My heart was pounding. And I kept thinking, if he can survive brain surgery, maybe he can survive me being angry at him for letting them treat him like a punchline. By the time I reached the small hotel where I planned to stay, Caleb had already changed his flight and checked himself into the hospital. He was taking care of himself, while I was left to wrestle with the shame and the anger and the twisted sense of justice I felt. I remember sitting on the bed, staring at the city lights outside, the kind of neon glow that makes everything look unreal. And I realized this dinner, this family, this disease, none of it was going to be simple, because love isn't about who laughs at your jokes. Love isn't about who shows up when everything is easy. Love is about who stays when everything is about to fall apart. And that night, sitting alone in a sterile hotel room smelling faintly of Lysol and old carpet, I questioned if we'd ever be that kind of love. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Beth. My heart sank before I even opened it. "Hey, Qley, maybe that dinner went a little too far. I know we all joked, but maybe don't shut him out completely. He's scared. Just think about it." I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't know if I should reply. Part of me wanted to write, "You're right. I overreacted." But another, louder part of me screamed, "No." He left without even a glance at me. He walked out like I didn't exist. The thing is, seeing Caleb like that, so small, so vulnerable, made everything more complicated. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to hold him and tell him it was all a joke, that I wasn't serious. But I also hated myself for laughing at something so serious. My chest tightened every time I imagined the MRI scans, the surgery, the very real possibility that he might go blind. Or worse. I didn't call him. I texted him once, just to make sure he was safe. "Hope your flight was okay. Hotel treat yourself." No reply. I checked my phone obsessively over the next 48 hours. Each unread text made my stomach twist. I told myself he needs space. He'll call when he's ready. But by the second day, guilt was eating me alive. I found myself at the hospital lobby on the third day. I had flown out earlier than planned, trying to surprise him. I wanted to be the one at his side, the one making jokes that wouldn't sting, the one showing him he wasn't alone. And there he was, sitting outside by that ridiculous fountain, his eyes scanning the gurgling water like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. He looked exhausted, not from the surgery yet, but from everything, the waiting, the uncertainty, the tension I'd caused. "Caleb," I said softly, my voice cracking. He didn't look up immediately. He just kept staring, hands clasped tight over his knees. Finally, he turned. And in that moment, I saw it. That look, the mix of hurt, disappointment, and disbelief. "You're being so unfair," I said, tears pricking the corners of my eyes. I wanted him to understand. I wanted him to see me. "I didn't mean it like that." I was trying to lighten the mood. "You always say I overthink everything." He shook his head slowly. "Qley, I have a tumor. A real, malignant tumor. You made jokes about me dying, about my brain, about leaving me. That's not lightening the mood. That's cruelty." I froze. His words cut sharper than anything Beth had said. And I knew he was right. I had tried to make it funny, tried to shield myself from the fear that had been building inside me, but instead, I had made him feel like he wasn't seen, like his pain was a punchline. He finally spoke again, quieter this time. "Do you even want to be here?" The question hit me like a punch. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say, "Of course, I'm here. I love you." But the truth? I wasn't sure. I had shown him that I couldn't handle the darkness. I had laughed when he needed compassion. And for a fleeting, horrible moment, I wondered if he had been right to walk out. I don't know how to deal with this," I admitted, my voice shaking. I was scared. I didn't know what to say. I thought jokes would help. I didn't think you'd actually leave." He looked at me for what felt like an eternity. His eyes, usually so warm, were guarded now. "Love isn't about who laughs when it's easy, Qley. It's about who stays when it's not. And you didn't." I tried to reach for his hand. He pulled back slightly. "I don't want to fight here," he said. "I need to focus on myself, on surviving this." I wanted to argue, to beg him to forgive me, but I realized it was pointless. I couldn't make him feel safe when I had proven I wasn't capable of being that person. My throat tightened, tears spilling freely. I had wanted to be his partner, his support, the one holding him steady. Instead, I had fractured everything. He stood, giving me a faint, pained smile. "Good luck, Qley." And just like that, He walked away. I watched him go, each step measured, resolute. The gurgling fountain echoed behind him, absurdly innocent, and I wanted to scream. I wanted to chase him, to fix everything, but I knew it was too late. Back in my hotel room, I stared at the ceiling, every corner filled with guilt. The city lights outside blurred through my tears. For the first time, I understood the gravity of my actions. I wasn't just embarrassed him. I had threatened the foundation of our relationship at the worst possible time. And then came the silence. For days, no messages, no calls. I kept telling myself he was healing, that he needed space. But the truth was, I was terrified. I realized that in trying to shield myself from fear, I had pushed away the person I loved the most. I didn't know if I'd get another chance. I didn't know if he'd ever forgive me. But one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same. The morning of Caleb's surgery, I couldn't sleep. Not that I'd slept much the night before either. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him sitting by that ridiculous fountain, the way his hands clenched, the tense line of his jaw. I wanted to run to him, to tell him everything I felt, but I knew it wouldn't matter. I had already shown him who I really was under pressure, and it wasn't the person he needed. By the time I got to the hospital, the place was buzzing with efficiency, smells of antiseptic and coffee floating in the sterile air. Caleb's sister, Miranda, was already there, sprawled in one of those fold-out chairs that looks comfortable until you've been sitting for 10 minutes. She had brought a stack of bagels and some ridiculous socks with tiny tacos on them. I thought they were stupid at first, but then I realized it was exactly what he needed: lightness, a touch of absurdity in a day filled with fear. I stayed outside his room, hesitant. I didn't know if I had the right to be there. I kept pacing, trying not to cry, trying not to vomit from nerves. And then I saw him. Caleb, hair shaved on one side, pale, but standing taller than I expected. The kind of resilience you don't see unless someone has been forced to face mortality head-on. I wanted to speak, to apologize, to beg him to forgive me, but my voice caught in my throat. I just watched, and then he did something I didn't expect. He smiled, faint but real, and said, "You came." I nodded, tears spilling, and whispered, "I couldn't not." He didn't say anything after that. He simply let Miranda guide him through the pre-op routine. I watched as the nurses prepared him, hooking IVs and asking the same questions I'd heard a dozen times over the past week. Name, date of birth, procedure? He answered quietly, almost matter-of-factly. And then the reality of it hit me. The reality that I might lose him. The thought made my chest tighten, made the guilt sharper than I'd ever felt. I realized I had been selfish. Not just in the jokes at dinner, but in thinking I could handle his illness on my own terms. The surgery room was surreal. Caleb disappeared behind a curtain of white and metal. I stayed outside, pacing, praying silently. The clock ticked slowly, mocking my impatience. And then, after what felt like an eternity, a nurse came out. "He's awake. He's stable." I rushed to the waiting area, my heart pounding. When I finally saw him again, he was groggy, bandaged, but alive. Relief crashed over me, so intense I couldn't speak. I wanted to hold him, but I stopped myself. This wasn't about me. It was about him. Miranda gave me a sideways glance, silently communicating. Give him space. Let him process. Over the next days, I tried to do just that, hovering close but not intrusive. Caleb's texts were sparse, polite but firm. "I appreciate you being here, but I need time." Every message was a reminder of my failure, a subtle punishment I deserved. I watched him slowly reclaim his world, sipping apple juice through a bendy straw, joking faintly about the taco socks and the absurdity of hospital gowns. And each time I wanted to be the person who made him feel safe, who didn't crumble under the weight of his fear. But the truth was, I wasn't that person. One afternoon, as I waited outside his hospital room, I saw a post on Instagram from him. the first in days. A photo of the hospital fountain, gurgling water, a caption, "Still alive." Still standing. Still ignoring bad jokes. I felt a pang in my chest. Shame, regret, love, all tangled together. I wanted to explain, to justify, but I knew no words could undo the damage. Finally, a week later, Caleb was discharged. I helped him back to his apartment carrying his bag, trying not to overstep, trying to let him set the pace. And as we walked through the door, I realized something profound. I hadn't just lost him temporarily. I had lost the version of myself that thought jokes could ever heal something this serious. That night, I sat alone, reflecting. I thought about the dinner, the cruel laughter, my own cowardice, and Caleb's unwavering bravery. I realized that sometimes love isn't about showing up when it's easy. It's about showing up when it's impossible, and that day I hadn't. The final message came a few days later. A simple text from Caleb, "I'm alive. I forgive myself. You need to forgive yourself too." And in that moment, I understood. My growth, my reckoning, wasn't about being forgiven. It was about seeing the consequences of my actions, facing them, and choosing to do better, even if it meant stepping back. I left his apartment that night feeling lighter but wiser, carrying the weight of my mistakes, the hope of redemption, and the understanding that love, true love, is measured not in words, but in who stays when everything falls apart. Weeks passed after Caleb's discharge, and I found myself in a strange limbo. I wasn't blocked out of his life. He hadn't even asked me to stay away, but our interactions were minimal. Sparse texts, polite nods when I saw him at the hospital for follow-ups, fleeting glances that carried more weight than any conversation ever could. I spent those days reflecting on everything: the dinner, the cruel jokes, the gaping hole my insensitivity had created. My family kept asking why I hadn't fixed it yet. Beth, with her typical nonchalance, sent me an email. "Qley, maybe it's time to swallow your pride and talk to him. You messed up, yes, but he's alive. Don't waste this chance." I stared at the screen, knowing she was right, and yet I hesitated. Talking to him wasn't about proving I was sorry, it was about proving I understood. And the truth was, I didn't know if I could make him see that. Meanwhile, Caleb was rebuilding his life. Slowly, cautiously, he started working part-time from home, easing back into a normal routine. I watched from the sidelines, invisible but invested. I wanted to step in, to be there for him, but the fear of overstepping, of making things worse, kept me at bay. One afternoon, I finally received a letter. Handwritten, no return address. My hands shook as I opened it. Page after page, Caleb poured out thoughts I didn't expect. Apologies, reflections, frustrations, even faint traces of humor. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me," he wrote, "but you did. And I needed to see who would stay when everything went wrong. I've learned a lot about myself, Qley, and about love. Sometimes love isn't enough when people can't show up the way they should. I hope you grow from this because I've grown too." I folded the letter, tears streaming. This wasn't a plea for forgiveness. It wasn't an attempt to reconcile. It was a gift, a mirror held up to my own failings, a lesson in humility and empathy. Over the next few weeks, I focused on myself. Therapy, long walks, journaling, learning to navigate my emotions without projecting them onto Caleb. I learned to forgive myself, not because he demanded it, but because I needed to. Caleb, for his part, was thriving in ways I hadn't imagined. He shared stories with friends, laughed at minor mishaps, and even started planning small adventures. I watched quietly, proud and wistful, understanding that his life would move forward, with or without me. One evening, we crossed paths in a local coffee shop. He was reading, headphones in, oblivious to the world. I hesitated, then smiled quietly. He looked up, recognized me, and gave a brief nod, a silent acknowledgement, a closure of sorts. "Hey," I said softly. "Hey," he replied. No emotions needed to be explained. No words could repair the past, and we both knew it. That night, I reflected on everything: the cruelty of jokes, the fragility of life, the lessons of humility, patience, and empathy. I realized that love isn't about perfect timing or flawless reactions. It's about presence, resilience, and integrity. And sometimes the deepest love is letting someone go so they can heal in their own way. Months later, I walked past a mirror and caught my reflection. The Qley in it was different. More grounded, more aware, more human. I still thought of Caleb often, but not with longing or regret. With gratitude. For the lessons. For the resilience he had shown. And for the clarity I had gained about who I was and who I wanted to be. Life went on. Family drama persisted, of course, because that's inevitable. Beth still made her jokes. My parents still worried about appearances, but I had changed. I carried the lessons like small, invisible tattoos across my heart. Reminders of fragility. Humor, empathy, and love in its truest, most challenging form. And somewhere I knew Caleb was walking his path. Alive, thriving, scarred, but unbroken. I had survived too, not just emotionally, but in a way that prepared me for the messy, imperfect, beautiful reality of life, because sometimes the hardest love story isn't about staying together. It's about learning to truly see each other, even if that vision comes too late to save the relationship. And that in itself is survival.